Hello, I'm Joanne Gallagher, your Think Future podcast host. Today we welcome back Dr. Florian Graichen, GM of Scion Crown Research Institute. Join us in a minute to hear how design is evolving in the circular bioeconomy and is sparking some exciting new innovations. This podcast is brought to you by Arcons, a global leader pioneering solutions and services to the AEC and manufacturing industries to support digital transformation for the built environment and smart manufacturing. Visit arcons.net to learn more about how Arcons are helping organizations design, build and solve through digitalization. From Arcons to you, welcome to our Think Future podcast series. Each week we'll share conversations with industry leaders from around the world to find out how they're thinking future. Subscribe to Arcons Think Future for access to more episodes, interviews and profiles. Dr. Florian Graichen is an Honorary Professor at the University of Waikato in the School of Engineering and is the General Manager for Scion Crown Research Institute in New Zealand, where he specialises in bioproducts and biomanufacturing areas including circular manufacturing, bioproducts and packaging, and integrated bioenergy. Hello, welcome back to the programme, Florian.
Thanks for having me again.
Florian, you've been on the podcast as a guest before, but before those who may not know you or your work, please tell us a bit about your academic background, industry experience within the research space with respect to forestry, wood product and biomaterial sectors.
Yes, so I grew up, went to school, went to university in Germany. I studied chemistry, pharmaceutical chemistry in Germany, in a small town in southern Germany, in Regensburg. And then went to New Zealand to do a postdoc. Never had envisaged to stay in New Zealand for longer, but I did so. Went to Canterbury, did also more in the chemistry field. But then I moved to Australia and started working at CSIRO in Australia. And that was where the first time I got into new materials, sustainable materials, largely crop-based, plant oil-based as alternatives to plastics or plastic building blocks. And moving on from there, I had the opportunity to work in Europe as commercial manager at Vito. Vito is the Flemish research agency. And I was responsible for the sustainable business side there. And after 3 years, I got the opportunity to come back to New Zealand, starting at Scion in the bioproducts and packaging space, which I did for about 4 years. And then I had the opportunity to move to the role of general manager for the whole bioproducts, biomanufacturing, bioenergy areas. And that's what I'm doing now. So I'm looking after a wide range of portfolios that include innovative solutions around new chemicals, new materials, packaging, plastics, but also bioenergy, but also how you manufacture them.
So Florian, you're focusing a lot on biocircularity. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, that's correct. So we are really focused on the circular bioeconomy, how we refer to it. We didn't want to make too much of a differentiation between circular economy or bioeconomy, because ultimately what we have is an economy, and the challenge is to move from the linear model, take, make, waste, to a much more sustainable, regenerative economy. And to do that, we need to work in the bioeconomy, but also in the circular design of the technological world. And that's why we think bringing both elements together that's the big win-win opportunity.
So what does a successful bioeconomy model look like across the various sectors you're dealing with?
I think that's quite interesting, because maybe you have to go to 40,000 feet first. What's the big challenge that we are facing? And if you look at it, we have the living beyond our means challenge. We quite often speak about Earth Overshoot Day, where we consume more resources than the planet can reproduce or produce. But also we have the challenge of climate change, of breaking through our planetary boundaries. And both elements come together. And the only solution to do that is really to look at how we can resource, be it energy, be it materials, be it way of living, construction, whatever it might be, in a much more regenerative and sustainable way. And without that, doesn't even matter which sector we are addressing. That's the most fundamental part. The other element that we would like to see, or that we are seeing more and more, is traditionally the success of a country or success of a company has always been identified or defined by GDP. But we believe in that in the circular bioeconomy, absolutely economic growth, yes, is necessary, but within planetary boundaries. So when we define sustainability and what we want to get to with that transition, is sustainability environmentally, in a social sense, but also economic sense. And only if you have all three factors, then you will be truly sustainable. And so that's where you can't do it alone, but where we want to contribute with science, innovation, technology.
So you're based in New Zealand. Are you collaborating around the world on these technologies?
Yes, and I think ultimately for anyone listening, if you ever think about career in science, research, technology, one of the most exciting things is science, technology, innovation is a global business. It doesn't matter where you're from, what country you're from, what continent. That's the global. It's a global community, and that I think makes it so exciting, especially for New Zealand, but also for Australia. I think probably can speak for both countries here. We are small. I mean, we are Australia, 25 million, New Zealand is 5 million. 99.8% of the most intelligent people will not live in our countries. So we need to work globally. We need to partner. We need to learn from all parts of the world, and then learn from it, but just blindly taking new ideas into our countries won't work. So we really have to look at then what works for Australia, what works for New Zealand. And so what we do at Scion is we have global partnerships, and that is good for us for the science, but also for the companies we're working with to build these value networks and value chains. But also it allows us to really identify quickly technologies much faster than we could develop it. So we are really specific in where do we invest into our own science, our own technology, and where do we see a better opportunity to adopt, and bring into the country.
So obviously you're building relationships and trust as part of the foundation of all of this collaboration. You spend time on building those relationships.
Yes. So I think this is very important. Relationships always start with trust. As much as we do online now, and as much as it is a digital world, business and exchanges and technology still develop between people. And so it's really, really important to have these face-to-face meetings to understand each other, but to understand and discuss, develop science together. And in New Zealand, we have a very unique opportunity now for 1 year since 2023. New Zealand is an associated member of Horizon Europe. So Horizon Europe is the European Union's science, technology, innovation program, 90 billion euros. And we can now work with European partners on equal levels. So we can receive funding, we can work in large work packages. And we were successful earlier this year with a larger program called Upwares. This is where we take some of our bio-based technology around conductive materials and contribute it to a big consortium, 7 countries, 15 partners. And that's where it allows us to really get tested against some of the best in Europe, but also learn a lot about science, technology, and how to get it to market from European partners.
That's interesting. And how do you share that language or make it a common vision, common shared language, common values? How are you working through that with policy? And because it's 21st century paradigm, we need new ways of doing things, new thoughts, new ideas, new collaborative mechanisms.
That's interesting that you mentioned policy, and that's a critical part. So for us, when at Scion, when we looked at setting up the areas that we are working in, so in my case, biotechnology, biomanufacturing, we can't do it alone. And we can't do it alone. It's not only in the context of science or technology. So there's multiple dimensions coming in. So the policy, the political side is coming in. So really working with ministries around what's the policy landscape. How can we inform? We are not setting policy, but we inform. We're here to inform best science, best technology to inform policy, but also to make sure that it's set. A lot of the policy comes out of a linear area, out of linear thinking. Now, suddenly, we need to have policy systems in place that allow circular and regenerative thinking. So that is a different attitude to write policy. In New Zealand, we've got massive opportunity because we have the indigenous lens as well. So we are fortunate that we can build solutions on global science, but we also have significant indigenous Te Ao Māori knowledge. And the magic is for us at the interface when you bring together traditional knowledge, Western global science, and derive solutions together. The other part, as I said, is the global and New Zealand collaborative partnership in science, technology, innovation. And then you have to bring in industry, be it local or be it global. And only if all these four things, these quadruple helix, when that comes together, then you can truly develop solutions. If you only drive it in one direction with one strain, it's very limited what you can achieve.
Yeah, so the barriers to this sort of new way of thinking, circular thinking, does involve risk. So how are partners collaborating to manage those risks or take the share of those risks, if you know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's interesting. And this is, you see it in different sectors. We've observed different attitude to risk. We have sectors that are more conservative and the risk appetite is not there, or it's not as significant as in others. So if you, in some areas we work with companies, they understand that right now they're at the top of their game. They have an existing pipeline of revenue, they have an existing pipeline of products, but their board and board of directors and management teams already understand what made us successful 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in the past up to now will not what makes us successful in the future. And some of the most innovative companies understand that they have to change and refocus while they have the strength and the revenue pipeline to do that. And it's really interesting to work with these companies where they move sideways or in new areas while they really have successful product lines. Other areas that we see now in the biotechnology space, in the biorefining space, biomanufacturing space, new companies like tech teams, basically, if you think about that as a really active driving companies, you don't have to explain to them risks. That is where we have the obligation, or we try to work with them to make sure that the technology, the science, the innovation is solid, is reproducible, is credible, to make sure that when they go to venture capital raising or when they go into the first production runs, that is successful. Because if something fails in these early stages, a whole industry can be tainted with that. No one's fault, but reputation and perception is very strong. So we work both with the existing sectors and try to help them to accelerate innovation, but also ensure new sectors, new industries don't derail and have the best technology practical to succeed.
Well, it sounds very dynamic and exciting.
Oh, it is at the moment, and it is such a exciting area at the moment to work in. I know in the media you hear all sorts of negative news about what's happening from plastic waste to climate challenges to planetary boundary issues. You name it. The media is full of it, and I don't want to talk that small. It's important that this is in the media and we hear about it. But what we've seen also, especially when it comes to activating young people and exciting young people, if all I do is just talk about all the things that go wrong, very hard to motivate someone to pick up science, technology, engineering, and come up with solutions. So what we've seen is acknowledge what's happening and put it in context. Everything we do, we put it in context, but What we want to talk about is solutions. Doesn't matter how, none of the things that I would be talking about I claim we will solve all the world's problems, but I think we provide a step towards it. And that's what we've seen when my team is speaking at conferences, for example. Yes, we will put it in context of issues, but then we start talking success stories of our partners. And for us, it's always important, it's the success of our partners, us enabling, and the businesses creating the impact then. And I've seen it with several students. That makes a big difference because suddenly they can see themselves learning engineering, learning coding, learning new technologies, and start creating solutions.
That's fantastic. What do you see then as the opportunity for the next generation of designers?
Oh, that's something I have to say I learned about probably 6, maybe 7 years ago. And as I said before, I studied chemistry. I'm a scientist. So traditionally, I didn't have much to do with designers at all. And in 2015, New Zealand ran what was called National Science Challenges. So it was big, hairy goals, audacious goals that we wanted to through collaboration, cutting-edge science, we wanted to resolve. And together with a colleague of mine from Waikato University, we led what's called a spearhead project. So about 8, 9 different partners, 50 people, students, all different disciplines coming together to drive additive manufacturing. So 3D printing, 4D printing, responsive materials, but using sustainable bio-based materials. And applications, anything from built environment to fashion to textiles, whatever it might be. And the interesting thing was that was for the first time where design schools were involved. And the traditional thinking of designers is always the question, so tell me what material you have or what design you have, and then I will give you the product. And what we did, and the professors of these design schools then told us afterwards, what we did in this spearhead was fundamentally shift how design students work. Because what we did right from the start, it wasn't, you're not limited by what design you have because you do additive manufacturing. So only your thoughts are your barrier. You're not limited what materials you have. We can design them. You design the product perfect to be reusable, recyclable, with the end of life in mind, with minimum waste, with whatever features you would like to have, and then work backwards. So everything that we had was design-led. And we tried to formulate that with like 3 principles for the scientists, but also for the designers. And one was nature wastes nothing. So if you go to nature, waste doesn't exist. Waste is a human concept. And every waste is just someone else's resource. That was principle number 1. Number 2, nature is able to transform. Like we have, when we look at our own design, even with buildings, they are static. In nature, nothing is static. Everything evolves, adjusts to changes of temperature, changes of the seasons, changes of whatever it might be. So we wanted to embed this also into the built environment. And the other thing was nature is an exceptional artist. So if you look at some of that concept of biomimicry, so learning from nature, looking how nature solves problems, we wanted to embed that into technical products. So no waste. It's an amazing artist and able to transform. That were the 3 principles we wrapped around that whole spearhead, including designers. And it was one of the most exciting projects I've been working on.
You mentioned circularity. Can you go into more about how that is a lever for change, how important that is?
What we, in circularity, what we see now is quite interesting. There are it's like a gradient of how businesses evolve. Like right now, if you think of the world we're living in at this stage, we've got 8 billion people. We have, out of the 9 planetary boundaries, we've already broken through 6. And if we go in that speed, we will break the other 3 as well. We are going to 10 billion people on this planet. And this is not just another 2 billion people. This is the rising middle class. This is China and India, where 4 billion people will want 6 fashion cycles a year. They want 3 cars. They want TVs in every room and so on. So it's not just adding another 2 billion people. It's significant. And this is where we see circularity is not just becoming a nice to have like sustainability. Sustainability is not even enough. Sustainability means we keep the status quo. But status quo, that's just freezing in the issues we have today. So this is where we see if companies, the minimum they do, and they won't have market shares otherwise anymore, is around sustainability. The next step then is that regenerative economy, actually to design in a way that you do more than just sustainable, you're giving back. And that is where we see companies, if they are brave enough and forward-looking enough, they take very early market shares and market parts because they're so forward-looking. And it's exciting to see certain environments now where companies are truly thriving of that. And it becomes yes, it's good for the planet, but it becomes a true differentiator in their business and marketing strategies. So for us, it is, as I said before, circularity is beyond the environment, and absolutely for the environment, but it has a social element and it has an economic element. And to look at that in systems, I think that's the big difference. In the past, we had, one source of feedstock, that was crude oil. We had, one way of disposing of it, digging it into the ground. And now suddenly we have to think in systems. We have to think in different shades. It's not this right or wrong anymore. It is. I've heard the terminology a number of times, circularish, where we can't wait for perfection. And people easily criticize, you could do this better and you could do that better. But for us, what we've seen with companies, the most important thing is get going. And then you compete with with the version you were yesterday, and you want to be better than you were the day before. You will not, it's continuous improvement. That's the more important part than only waiting for perfection and only then start moving.
Well, it's biomimicry again, because nature evolves as well. As the pressures change on the system, the nature seems to morph into something better. It's really amazing how that is. I'm just talking to you personally, how I see it.
And I think this is with biomimicry. I think that's a great thing. As you said, there is the element of the attitude, as you said, morphing into something better, but really, again, listening to our designers, engineers, that the design input that you can get from nature is stunning. So with people listening out there, you can think of ultra strong spider silk, for example. That is amazing weight to strength ratio. What spider silk can do, and we can mimic that actually. So this is fantastic material. People know probably the feet of geckos and how suddenly adhesion, nature-inspired adhesion systems is amazing. Or more speaking of built or buildings, wind turbines. People know that. So if you look at some wind turbines and compare it to the fins of whales, so that's been how nature has inspired design there. And that's truly amazing how much you can learn both from the type of a material, but also shape, form, and function.
It's amazing. Archons has a mission to advance the efficiency, quality, and profitability of project outcomes for its customers by providing best-in-class technology and services. If you're looking for a digitalization and sustainability-focused partner to help you achieve your goals, join the thousands of AEC and manufacturing customers globally who have turned to Archons to start their journey toward a better built environment and smarter manufacturing. With more than 50 locations around the world, Archons can connect you to the right technologies and expertise so you can improve your competitive position and increase profitability. Archons has an industry expert to help you navigate the best pathway forward wherever you are on your digitalization and sustainability journey. Visit archons.net to find out more. And now back to our conversation. So you mentioned circularish. and that probably involves a lot of new disciplines or budding disciplines coming together. Can you give a few examples of what you're seeing out there, collaborating different materials? You touched into it, but have you got specific examples to share?
I think in collaboration, it's amazing. You've mentioned a couple of things, what comes together. Artists and scientists, for example. Traditionally, you wouldn't see them as, necessarily related. Maybe that they have some wild ideas, but otherwise not much. The other thing that's really interesting, and we see it in science disciplines now, is artificial intelligence, design, biology coming together. Amazing what is possible now when you bring these cutting edge technologies together. And we see it more and more that progress is not just in one discipline. It's always at this interface of maybe something that does not necessarily seem related, but is truly really, really running ahead. And the other thing that I think is really critical for anything we talk about is you can never underestimate the part of teachers, journalists, and people like yourself to get that word out. Because as a scientist, we are great at writing scientific literature. Unfortunately, 99.99% of the world will never read it. And what we need is the work of the journalists, of the media, to translate it, to make it tangible for the 80% in the world where the science doesn't matter, but the outcome matters. And that bringing that together is critical as well.
Storytelling for sustainability.
Absolutely.
And thriving. We need to tell the stories of what's working.
Yep.
And focusing on what we can do better instead of telling the story about what not's working,
Absolutely. And I think again, biomimicry in the built environment is such an exciting field, because once you start pointing out to people, there are so many buildings out there that are based on biomimicry principles. So I noted down a couple. People might know in Singapore what's called the Esplanade Theatre, and that is mimicked on durian, like the fruits, like these spiky fruits, very robust shell, and that is set in a way then that the shading here can adjust to light or can adjust to heat, like a flower petal, for example. A flower will always adjust to where the sun is, and so that is mimicked based on that. Or the Graichen in London is quite a famous skyscraper, so that mimics a Venus flower sponge and has this really the strength outside, and then internally no specific structure, but then allows like ventilation, airflow, water flow. Quite spectacular building. And once you look at the building and then you look at that sponge, it's like, oh my God, this is just a huge version of the sponge. Or in my home country in Germany, it's probably like 10 years ago now, what's called the algae house. So is a house with at the outside like algae, and the algae kind of is basically your bioreactor, allowing you to produce biomass to then do biogas for your heat. So you've got that, you create your own energy source and use the space that the house is giving you. So it's quite spectacular. And multiple of these biomimicry, biomaterials inspired in the built environment, actually.
So when it comes to residential, the built environment where people are circulating water, is there ways to do that mimics nature too?
What we see now is a lot learning out of the forest, basically, because that's what trees and the environment does, with like slowly going through different layers that is filtering out then contaminants and other parts. So there's a lot to be learned from. And water in general in the built environment is a really interesting one. And this is where what we saw, where it's really critical to see built environment not in isolation from systems design and circular city design, like urban design. Because a house alone, like if you build a sustainable house or a sustainable building, if that's not interconnected with sustainable systems, it doesn't help you very much. And this is another element where design and design thinking has to change or come in, like really systems thinking. That in isolation that doesn't work anymore. And I can recall a number of courses we've given to policy students. And one thing was what we wanted to teach them was, how would you design a circular city? With what policy regulation do you start? What do you have to mandate first? Is it the type of material? Is it the type of building? Is it the type of roading? Is it waste structure? Is it water infrastructure? Is it other utilities? Because where we wanted to get to is, at the moment, what you think with cities, you bring resources in and then you take waste out. That's how a city works, basically. In a circular city, you need to build your buildings. You need everything that ultimately you create your food in the city. You reuse your waste, your water in the city. And you won't just do that with one building. So this is where all of that will have to come together.
And so what did the kids say? What were you surprised at how they designed the solutions?
The great thing that we had when we did these things with either older high school students or early university students, they had no preconceived limitations. When we did it with policy students, or later, once they've been through a number of exposed to existing policies, they all thought about the barriers why you can't do it. So that was the first thing. They kind of basically set the limitations, and then they started creating within the limitations. And so it was a very incremental change that we had. With students, they didn't even know about the things they were not allowed to do, couldn't do, shouldn't do, wouldn't do. Look completely different. And that's so exciting why I think you need the diversity of people when they design. You need the ones that fly and that try to strive to this unobtainable, but then you also need to bring the ones in then to ground it. But you have to do it in the right order, because otherwise you will never truly do transformational change.
I just love that. I love that. When I was studying in Sweden, we were told, we're already adults, of course, try to remove all the barriers. If it was a perfect, ideal situation or world, what would you do? And amazing to see all of the beautiful ideas. And then you have to organize them, categorize them into what's feasible and short, medium, and long-term possibilities and so on. So yeah, the kids seem to do that naturally, don't they? They're all visionary people.
Absolutely.
That's great.
And this is what we saw around circularity, the need to bring diversity together. Mm-hmm. Because if I design it out of one discipline, out of one knowledge level, very, very critical, very hard to be innovative and really come up with the solutions we require. Because if you think of the urgency that we are facing, incremental change, slowly adjusting won't get us there. So we really have to do that, radically redesign. What should we be doing? Really rethink that. The other thing, people quite often look at technology development in a very linear, in a very traditional way. But if you think about how exponentially new technology came in, if you think about AI in artificial intelligence or ChatGPT, 2022, no one knew that word. 2023, everyone uses it. And what that did within, not even a year. And if you think of that not only in one discipline, but you overlay the knowledge we have in genetics, you overlay what we know in engineering, in other design things. That's how do you capitalize with all of that? So the speed of the past doesn't really matter. Going
back to water, you were talking there briefly about biomimicry around water. What examples have you noticed in the built environment?
It's interesting what we've seen. I can probably speak of of our building here. So what Scion has been doing is very much advocate for building with wood. And we always saw wooden building as one of the keys to eliminate one of the most environmentally and also water consuming products like concrete. And it's very often, and again, we pushed into this boundary, why would you build with wood? And it's interesting to see then how that is such a solution for two things. One, it is an answer to the challenge we have. It expands basically the forests. You store carbon, long-term carbon in buildings. It's also such a massive opportunity for new designers and for new companies. And what we noticed is that what happened, again, bringing different technologies together, the opportunity now with digital design, with digital manufacturing, how quickly you can create new buildings and how quickly you can create wooden buildings is truly amazing. And for us, it was important not to speak about building with wood or building in wood and all the design. We can do that forever. So we actually were building a 3-story office building here in Rotorua in New Zealand. And interestingly, it sits right next to the forest. And what that allows us to do is really demonstrate the principle of building with wood, that it is truly an extension of the forest. Because if you think about this, we're taking the wood out of the forest, and people might argue, don't cut down the trees. But what we do is we make space to grow more trees. And so what it is an extension. It's an extension of the forest. At the same time, we are avoiding things like concrete, which is one of the most polluting, industries again. And the other thing, if you look at I don't know if you've looked at recently construction sites, conventional construction sites, very, very polluted sites, a lot of waste flying around. Once you do this modular building with wood, completely different. Things are manufactured at different sites. They come here, you build them. Height is maintained or gained much quicker. So there's a lot of benefits with that. And I can't say how much that impacted the fact that we can bring people in and show them that, and show them elements, and show them new materials. So that comes back to the storytellings, but also back to the demonstrating things. That's so critical.
Sounds very interesting. Florian, what other case studies can you share about taking a systems approach to design and use of natural resources?
And I think this is a really good question, and comes probably back to your an earlier question you asked about: is it bioeconomy? Is it circular economy? And so for us, when we look at materials or feedstock or what to make it from, is we don't differentiate between where the sustainable carbon or the sustainable material comes from. It can be bio-based. So, when we talk about building with wood or construction with wood, so that's bio-based. In the technosphere, in the world of plastics, we made billions and billions of tons of plastics already. And instead of making new plastics, how can we reuse and recycle better? So that's the second form. And more in new technology, we have CO2 in the atmosphere. Can we turn CO2 in the atmosphere already into products? So we look at these 3 sources of feedstock. That's our renewable, sustainable sources. The fourth one, underground coal, gas, oil, that's the one we need to keep underground. So if I look at some of the stories we have in terms of that, they play in all these 3 sources of renewable feedstock. So if I look at that technosphere, and is a company in New Zealand called Usefully, and they are developing an approach to use textiles that would go into landfill. And instead of burying it in landfill, we've developed with them a process to turn some of the fiber or use some of the fiber as an additive in roading. So to make streets. So now instead of having to make this additive somewhere, we can avoid textiles going to landfill. We repurpose it and then have the material in roads. So that's an extremely exciting approach there.
Florian, I saw you posted an article on xylofoam on your LinkedIn profile. Can you tell us what that's about, please?
Yes, so that's an exciting development. Came out of a partnership between 3 of New Zealand's Crown research agencies, Plant and Food, Scion, and Ag Research. And a company out of these 3 Crown research agencies, the Biopolymer Network, developed a new material that you referred to called xylofoam. And that's really exciting. So we all know the polystyrene. So when you buy your fridge or you buy a new TV and you unpack it, your whole garage is full of this white, light, fluffy material. And what we develop is a bio-based alternative to that. So we are using, or the company is using polylactic acid. So that is coming out of a sugar-derived polymer, bio-based polymer. And you can foam that like you foam polystyrene. And so different products can be made. I think the photo we had here, or the photo the company showed, was fish boxes. So, fish is stored in polystyrene boxes. And so instead of having polystyrene, you can have this new material, xylofoam, that is then also can be used, performs the same way as polystyrene, but is bio-based.
Well, isn't that fantastic? When I read that, I was so excited. I hate styrofoam. I feel so bad about putting it in the bin as well.
Yeah, it is with that. People start recycling it, but it is so light and so such a big volume. It's a really challenging material. We are developing other alternatives, based on natural fibers and the likes. But it is you can see so many. You're not lacking opportunities to invent and innovate in that circularity space.
It's a great example, Florian. Thanks for that. As we close out today's conversation, when you think future about the potential of design and these young designers using biomaterials for sustainability, what is it that excites you the most?
What excites me at the most is, and the favorite time of the year is always in November. Scion has been taking in summer students now for about, we've done it, on and off a couple of years, but really systematically for the last, 3 years. So we take about 35 summer students. Initially, we kind of had this let's design some specific student projects. And then we said no, we'll just let them work with the teams. So they don't get any students projects. We just throw them into the deep end and let them work with the teams. And it's 2 things it does. It's they bring in ideas, and sometimes it puts the science teams to shame. Amazing what they think about. And the other thing is the dynamic is amazing. They bring in such a great atmosphere, such a can-do attitude. So having then, 30 people on campus, and we bring in them for all disciplines. We also bring them in for our corporate teams, in the comms team and the finance team, because you can't beat new ideas. It's amazing. We are an innovation agency, so innovation can come from anywhere, and that's probably what I see. So I'm reading also about all the challenges of that generation, but when I see them as scientists, engineers, or designers, I'm seeing amazing talent and really exciting ideas coming through. So that's probably what I like so much, because the new technology that some of us see as challenging and see as a hurdle, they see as an asset. And that I think is just beautiful.
I've got goosebumps listening to you. It's so exciting. I can see you're so excited as well.
It is, yes.
Well, this has been great. If people want to reach you, is it through LinkedIn? Is that the best way?
Sure, that's probably the best way, yeah.
So Scion research?
Scion or my profile, either way is fine.
Yeah, okay. Great. Well, thank you very much, Florian, for having you again on the show.
Fantastic.
Keep us informed if anything new happens. We'll love to tell the story with you. Bye-bye for now.
Thank you. Pleasure. Take care.
This podcast was brought to you by Arcons. Arcons is leading the digital transformation of the AEC and manufacturing industries by providing best-in-class technology solutions from world-leading partners and their own in-house development software from the Archon's BeSmart portfolio for building, infrastructure and manufacturing. Archons is a company that cares about creating and building a better world. Together, we are working with industry and environmental experts, providing forums and platforms through our Archons Think community to create conversations that matter to our future generations. We invite you to join in the conversation and participate in our Think community. Like and subscribe to Think Future to stay up to date with the latest innovations and conversations as we advance the digital journey for the AEC and manufacturing around the world. You can download our podcasts at archons.net or from your favourite podcast platform.